Hi everyone, how are you? This video is going to be a good one because it's an issue that every entrepreneur faces, and that is, how do you calculate your target market? Every entrepreneur has faced this with every business they've started. And this is very important because it's actually a little bit tricky to calculate your target market, and I'll explain many of the mistakes people make, and then we'll get into how to actually calculate your target market and what some tools are, some services are, and what generally are good practices to do. So let's get started. So first of all, your target market is extremely important to identify because that's the market to which you will sell. Now, I have a whole separate video explaining the importance of your target market and identifying it. So I won't get into that. I have a whole video for that. So in this video, I'm just going to assume we've identified our target market. And it's not everyone, it's some segment of some population, right? And the difficulty is to know how big that is. How do you count it? And sometimes you should start, what units of measurements should you use, right? So the units of measurements that are most often used are dollars, or whatever currency that you're working with. The secondary units of measurement are, you can talk about people, or you can talk about units sold, right? But generally, I generally see most target markets estimated in the dollar amounts, and so that's the units we're going to use. Then there's the concepts of the target market. Then there's the total addressable market, and then there's the served market. And these are important. These are very important definitions and concepts. We need to go over them so that we know what we're dealing with. Okay. So your total market. So your total market. Let's say you're selling an app, like I am, for example. So let's say you're selling an app. So my total market is every app, every mobile user in the world. So that's the total addressable market, right? But I can't reach them, right? Because my apps are only on, they're only on Google Play, they're only in the App Store, right? So, like for example, China uses a different Android store, and I'm not there, so my apps aren't really available in China very much. So even though the potential is so great, the potential market is all users in the world, the market I can actually serve is actually smaller. It's only the apps. It's only the countries where my apps are available. And the same as even if you have a restaurant. Your total market may be like all people eating or something, but the people you can serve really only live in your geographic area within a few miles radius. So it's a big difference, right? Then it gets even smaller because so let's get back to the example of my apps. Within the target market that I can serve, it turns out I can't serve everyone so my app's there for business, right? So very few children use these apps, and actually very few people over 40 use these apps. My actual target market is 19 years old to 35 years old, 43% female, 57% male, United States, Canada, UK, Australia, India, South Africa. Those are the main countries where my target market actually is. Those are my main target markets. And I know that just because that's where my apps are downloaded. Like English speaking is important, right? Because if you've used my apps, there's a lot of educational content on them. And so if people don't speak English very well, that app becomes not as useful for them. But if the users speak English, then they can use it better, more for their benefit. It's easier, it's more helpful to them. So my target market gets very narrowed, right? And now I can certainly count, right? Now I can actually count it, because I can, for example, count how many mobile users in the US are using Android or iOS, and then I can count, how many apps usually people like buy or pay for, and that age group. Those are all numbers that are available. And then the only number that's not really readily available is how many. Well, actually, the number is actually available. How many people buy? What's an average person? How many apps does an average person buy per month or a year, right? So actually, I can calculate. I can take my target market, right? I know their age group. I know their, male or female breakdown. I know their interests. So I know their demographics. I can tell how many people there are. And then I can protract that over what average amount do they spend on apps, right? And that's my target market. That's how you count your target market. So that's important, right? So it's exceptionally important. It's extremely important to not mistake the total market, which is like the big number that I will never be able to reach it, well, at least not for a very long time. And then there's the served market, the people I can actually serve. Like I can actually physically deliver the product to them, which is smaller than the overall market. But then still, even though there are so many people to whom I can deliver the product, many or most of them aren't within my main range of buyers, right? So that target market, that's that sweet spot where you can count it, because you know how to narrow it down. Especially if you see my other video, I talk about demographics and psychographics, how to understand who's going to buy, or how to really identify and pinpoint your target market customer. I talk about that. Just find that video. It's very important, and it's almost like a part 1 to this video. And in this video, it's really, narrowing down and then counting. So that counting, extremely important, right? Because then I can literally, tell like what's in each country, what's the size of my market in that country, and then I can, decide, am I going to focus on North America? Am I going to focus on the UK? Am I going to focus on India? Because what is my target market, right? How much money is the potential? Now, that's kind of how you do it. Let's go over some mistakes people make. Of course, number one mistake is when people say my target market is everyone, there's absolutely nothing you can do, because you didn't get your demographics right, and you can't get this kind of math right. And for that reason, you should never say, and I've said that in my last video, you should never say my target market is everyone. The next mistake people make is when they write a business plan, and this is kind of like an old school mistake. I don't know why it's done so often, but maybe you've heard this mistake. And it often comes up in business planning. People write, this market is $100 billion. If we just conquer 1% of this market, then we'll have, so much money. And that's just the incorrect line of thinking, because to get 1% of that market is probably unbelievably difficult, and there are so many obstacles, and the structure of thought is just not that correct structure of thought. I mean, you're kind of stabbing in the dark, What if you get 0.25% of, the target market? What if you get 3%? You just don't know. So you can't, this is not a worthwhile line of thought. Let's see, I have some notes here. What did I forget? Yeah. So sometimes you're in a target market or a served market where the statistics aren't readily available. Like, for example, recently there was someone who's starting a cafe in a local area, right? Well, the number for how much money people are spending on eating out and coffee and things like that, and coffee shops in an area, that number is not available, right? because it's for that little area. And that's a difficult case, because how do you know, right? If you take a sample size survey, that's flawed, because I mean, yeah, it gives you some basis of thought, but like you have to get a really big survey, right? And so sometimes what people do is they hire market research firms. They are reasonably good. I mean, that's what they do. They do market research for you. So they determine the numbers that aren't publicly available for you. The challenge with those is that if you have an innovative business, or if you're creating a market, or if you're doing something like that, market research firms, they research the current state of things. But they can't tell what's going to happen in the future. So if you're doing something innovative, that may not be the right solution for you, because it's a little bit like an apples and oranges situation. It's just not a match of methodology or thought. So that's kind of it. Let's see some more notes that I made. See if I forgot anything. I think you guys got it. I think that whole idea of, just keep in mind that total addressable market, that's everyone. The served market is the people to whom you can actually deliver your product. And then the target market is that more narrow market whom you can target, deliver the product, and who are your sweet spot, right? And those are the guys that are going to generate the most revenue for you, right? So that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope you've learned. I hope that was insightful. And I hope now you are going to be kind of a better writer of the section of how to calculate your market size. Now I hope it's going to be easier for you. So please subscribe to the channel, and of course, as always, I'd be delighted if you checked out my apps. Problemio.com. They cover business planning, marketing, business ideas, fundraising, and of course, if you're on the apps watching this video, then thank you for getting the apps. I appreciate that. And I hope the apps are helpful to you, as is this video. And I'll see you in my next video. Bye.